What's going on, everybody? Today I'm back here in this little tomato section of my winter garden, and today's video I want to talk to you guys about growing big, large tomatoes and tomato plants in the winter time in Florida rather than waiting till spring. I'm going to talk about how I do it and why I do it. So thank you guys so much for tuning into the video. If you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up and leave any questions and comments down below. I really appreciate it. All right, guys, so the first thing that I want to talk about is why I grow tomatoes in the fall and winter on up into spring rather than waiting till spring to plant, and why, if you live in Central to South Florida, you should consider doing the same thing in the future. Typically when you think about tomatoes, especially around the rest of the country, you think about getting them in as early as you can in spring, being able to harvest tomatoes all through the summertime, right up until the first frost. And it doesn't really work here for large tomatoes. If you want to grow cherry tomatoes, you have a lot higher of a chance of success through the hot spring and the hot summer. I can grow cherry tomatoes and get them to last throughout the whole summer. They may not set as much fruit in the extreme heat of the summer, but a lot of times they'll continue growing. These large tomatoes, I feel like they're more susceptible to diseases. They don't do as well with a lot of rain, and you don't get a lot of fruit set. You can absolutely plant in early spring and get a handful of nice fruits, but you're not going to get what I've got going on here. So the main reason on why you are growing in the wintertime is because we have such mild winters typically, and because if it does get cold, you can throw cloths over and protect your tomatoes. It's not that big of a deal. Also, it is typically, depending on whether we have an El Nino or a La Nina pattern during the wintertime, it's typically the more drier seasons. And so you can really better regulate the amount of water that your tomatoes are getting. And also, just something with the humidity. It's not as humid as it is in the summer. It's not as blistering hot. I mean, it's in the 80s today, although it had been in the upper 30s just a couple days ago. Not cold enough to really damage the plants or to stop the fruit set. But, if you live in Central or South Florida and you've had problems through the spring and summer growing tomatoes, you should absolutely give growing tomatoes a shot, planting them out in the fall and then letting them grow through the winter time. Now I'm gonna show you guys how I do it now that I've talked about why I do it, and then I'm also gonna show you these plants so you could see that I'm not just talking, that there's really good production to back up what I'm saying. So let me turn the camera around and show you guys what I got going on. So as you can see, with all of the vegetables that I'm growing in my winter garden that most places can't grow until spring, everything is thriving, including my tomatoes. This is my little tomato town, if you will. And back here, I'm growing 2 different varieties of heirloom tomatoes. And I want to show you guys exactly how I'm doing it. Now, there is some controversy and what I'd call a little misinformation, I guess. I've seen on a couple channels, one channel specifically, the lady has, quite a following, and I'm not gonna, put her channel out there like that, but she says that you can't grow tomatoes in our area in the ground, that you either have to grow them in pots or in raised beds. And I'm telling you, that's not accurate, okay? And you can see here, I'm gonna keep it transparent. This is extremely sandy soil, just extremely sandy soil. And you can see that my tomato plants are all planted right in the ground. So number one, that's how I planted them, in the ground. I put a couple nice shovelfuls of my homemade compost, in the soil before I planted the tomatoes, and a little bit of rabbit manure, and really that is it. So it's absolutely possible to grow big, large, healthy tomatoes that give you a ton of tomatoes in the ground. They don't have to be in pots or raised beds. So, and I mean, if you look at this plant here, I'm 6 feet tall. This is a little bit taller than me now. I mean, that's a 6 foot fence, and it's a little bit taller than the 6 foot fence. I'm letting it grow over into the star fruit for extra support. And I mean, there's really nice tomatoes. This is a Cherokee Purple, which is my favorite. And I've got 4 Cherokee Purples and 3 red Brandywines. So first off, I'm growing them in the ground, in the native soil, with just nice compost. I really don't use any fertilizer except for what I make myself out of compost tea and rabbit manure. And that is all that has fed these plants. Now, we've had a pretty warm winter and fall thus far, but we have had some really chilly nights and some chilly days. And last week we had some extreme wind. Now you guys can see that there are just basic tomato cages on most of these tomatoes, and then I also have some homemade cages that I've made out of wire mesh. And then as the tomatoes have grown, I have used these long crepe myrtle branches that I've trimmed from trees myself, and I save them because they're a great stake. I drive them into the ground about a foot and a half, and they are extremely sturdy to hold these tomatoes up, as you can see. And I have not single staked these tomatoes here. Look at the bees on the tomato plants there. I have not single staked these tomatoes, and you can see, because a lot of people talk about having to single stem the tomatoes to get maximum production, and that's also not always the case. As you can see here, we've got some really gorgeous red Brandywines going on. You can see how productive these plants have been. There are a ton of tomatoes, and I have not been pruning off suckers. And like I said, I have not, here's more back here. I have not single stemmed these plants. I'm letting them do what they want to do and just trying to keep them tied up and off the ground. Here's another Brandywine here that you can see, and with some just really, really nice large tomatoes on it. And then this is my showstopper, if you will, here. It's been so productive, and I've got some suckers in the house that I did cut off because I'm cloning them. But as you can see, I am still getting tremendous fruit set up at the top of this Cherokee Purple here. I mean, I can't make this stuff up, guys. There's so many fruits on this particular plant. You can see as we come down, there's just clusters of tomatoes absolutely everywhere. And I mean, there is a lot of tomatoes on this plant. If you peek inside even further, you can see tomatoes everywhere. Tomatoes on the back side, tomatoes here, right along the bottom, tomatoes here. And if we come around, you can see more tomatoes, and this one here is starting to blush. So I'd say within the next week, this big girl will be ready to harvest. So, these things are absolutely thriving here in the winter time. Now, I started these seeds back in September. I got these plants in the ground in November, and it is mid-January now. And look at how productive they have been. If you plant tomatoes in the spring in Florida, you will not get this much productivity from one plant. It just gets too hot, too quick. And there has got to be, on this one particular cherry tomato, Cherokee purple tomato, excuse me, there has got to be between 30 and 40 fruits on this one plant. And all the plants are just absolutely full of fruits. Here's another Cherokee purple here with lots of big, large fruits on it. And this is the winter time, guys. So give it a shot. If you live in Central Florida, or if you live in South Florida and you've tried growing tomatoes in the spring and summer and it hasn't really worked well for you, try planting them out in the fall. Let them grow all winter long. You might just get the success here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll get back at you soon with another video.